Not by the guards, not by cameras, but by something else, something deeper within the system, a response triggered by our presence, automated perhaps, or directed. Either way, time was no longer on our side. The lights shifted slightly, not enough for a human to notice immediately, but enough for me. Alarms would follow, not loud, not obvious, but silent signals to those who mattered. "Karen," I said quietly, "we need to move now." She nodded, already finishing the transfer, securing the data as footsteps approached from multiple directions, more than before, heavier, more coordinated. These were not standard guards. These were something else, enhanced perhaps, or simply better trained. It did not matter. They were in our path, and they would not allow us to leave easily. I positioned myself between them and Karen as the first group entered the corridor. Their weapons raised, their movements precise. They opened fire immediately, not with hesitation, but with intent. They were not here to capture. They were here to eliminate. I moved through the gunfire, closing distance faster than their eyes could track, disarming, breaking, disabling each one in sequence. Controlled, efficient, non-lethal where possible, though not all survived their own aggression. Karen moved behind me, following my lead, staying within the space I created for her. We advanced toward our exit, but the resistance increased. More units, more obstacles, doors, ceiling, pathways shifting, the building itself responding to contain us. Intelligent design, adaptive defense. This was not a simple operation. This was infrastructure built to withstand intrusion, which only confirmed its importance. We reached the vertical access point, but it was no longer open. Sealed, reinforced, designed to trap us inside. Karen looked at me for a moment, not with fear but with calculation. She was thinking, adapting, just as I was. Good. I prefer that in a partner. I stepped forward, placing my hands against the barrier, feeling its composition, its weaknesses. Every material has limits, even those designed to appear unbreakable. I applied pressure slowly at first, then increasing, until the structure began to give metal bending, fracturing under force that exceeded its tolerance. The sound was contained, but the effect is not. We had made our own exit, and we would take it before whatever controlled this place could escalate further. As we ascended back toward the surface, I knew this was only the beginning. We had uncovered a piece of something much larger, something that would not simply disappear because we had found it. And now that it knew we were here, it would respond. The hunt had changed. We were no longer tracking it. It was now aware of us. And in my experience, that is when things become truly dangerous. We did not leave unnoticed. I knew that before we even reached the surface, the shift in the building, the coordinated response, the escalation in force, all of it pointed to one truth. This was not an operation that tolerated exposure, and now we had exposed it. Kara moved beside me as we cleared the rooftop, her breathing controlled but heavier than before. Not from fear, but from the weight of what we had just seen, what we had taken, what we now carried with us. Evidence, yes, but also a declaration. We had stepped into something far larger than either of us had fully understood, and now it would react. The city stretched out before us, unaware of the fracture that had just formed beneath its surface, unaware that something had been disturbed that would not quietly settle back into place. I carried her down again, moving across the structures until we reached a distance that felt acceptable for now. Not safe, nothing is truly safe, but removed enough to think, to plan, to process. She immediately began reviewing the data even before we stopped fully. Her focus absolute, her mind already building connections faster than most I have encountered. She spoke names, organizations, shell companies, financial routes, all linked, all feeding into the same hidden structure. This was not a single facility. It was a network, just as I suspected. Multiple locations, multiple layers, each designed to operate independently, yet connected through controlled channels. A system built to survive disruption, built to continue even if parts were destroyed. I have seen this before, on other worlds, under different rulers. It is how empires of shadow sustain themselves, not through strength alone, but through redundancy, through secrecy, through the ability to lose pieces without losing purpose. Karen looked up at me then, her expression shifting from analysis to something else, something closer to realization. "This goes higher than I thought," she said. "Not just criminals, not just traffickers. This is organized, funded, protected." I nodded, because I already knew the scale. I could feel it in the design, in the discipline, in the lack of hesitation from those we encountered. They were not afraid of law enforcement. They were prepared for it, which means they had influence over it, or confidence that it could not reach them in time. Either way, it meant that the system Karen trusted was already compromised, in ways she did not want to accept fully yet. But she would. She is not blind, only hopeful, and hope can be reshaped by truth. We needed to decide our next move carefully, because acting too quickly would alert them further, while waiting too long would allow them to adapt, relocate, erase what we had found. Karen wanted to bring this to her superiors, to initiate official action, to use the evidence, to force a response. I did not argue immediately, because I understand her need to follow her world's structure. But I also understand something she is still learning. Once something like this is exposed within a compromised system, it does not always lead to justice. Sometimes it leads to silence, to disappearance, to the quiet removal of problems before they can be addressed. I have seen leaders vanish, entire investigations erased, not by force, but by influence, by control, by fear. She contacted Captain Denmark first, a decision I agreed with, based on what I had observed of him. He is cautious, measured, not easily swayed. His response was immediate and serious. He understood the weight of what she was presenting, but even through the communication I could sense his hesitation. Not doubt, but awareness. He knew this would not be simple. He instructed her to hold position, to secure the data, and to avoid further engagement until he could assemble a trusted unit, a small one, he emphasized, not through official channels, but through people he knew he could rely on. That was a good sign. It meant he understood the risk of exposure.
Do you have any clue what I had to do to get here? I don't think you do, so stay tuned and keep your ears glued to the stereo, cause here we go. He's chicken, chicken, I'm the sinister Mr. Kiss my it's just a renegade. Never been afraid to say what's on my mind at any given time of day, cause I'm a renegade. Never been afraid to talk about anything.
While she spoke, I listened not just to her words, but to the world around us. The subtle shifts, distant movements, patterns most would ignore. That's when I felt it again. That same disturbance, that same awareness. We were being watched, not visibly, but tracked, monitored. Followed through means more advanced than simple observation. I scanned the area, expanding my perception outward, and found it. Small devices positioned strategically across nearby structures. Sensors, not originally present when we arrived. They had deployed quickly, efficiently, already adapting to our escape. This was escalation, confirming my suspicions. This was not just a human operation anymore. It had access to technology beyond what should be available here, which meant external influence had already taken root. "Karen," I said quietly, cutting through her conversation. "We need to move. Now." She saw it in my expression, heard it in my tone, and did not question it. She ended the call quickly. Securing the devices, we relocated again. Faster this time, less predictable. I altered our path, avoiding patterns, doubling buck, using routes that would disrupt tracking algorithms. If that is what they were using, we moved through the city like a shifting shadow, never in one place long enough to be fixed. And slowly, the sense of observation diminished, not gone, but reduced enough to think again. We stopped near the water, where the noise of the environment masked smaller signals, where the chaos of movement made precise tracking more difficult. Karen resumed the conversation with Denmark, updating him on the new development, the tracking, the advanced tech, the likely compromise of standard channels. His response changed immediately, from cautious to urgent. He instructed her not to return to the precinct, not yet, to avoid all predictable locations, and to meet him at a secondary site, one not officially documented, one he trusted completely. She agreed and ended the communication. Then she looked at me. and I could see it now. The shift I knew would come. The moment where belief in the system begins to fracture under the weight of reality. "They are watching us," she said, not as a question, but as a confirmation. "Yes," I responded, "and they will not stop. Not now." She took a moment, then nodded once. Not in fear, but in acceptance. "Good. That will make what comes next easier." For her to process, we moved toward the meeting point Denmark had provided, an old structure, unused, forgotten by most, but not by him. A place where control could be maintained, where trust could be measured. When we arrived, he was already there, along with 2 others, both armed, both alert, carrying themselves with controlled awareness. I have come to recognize in those who have faced real danger. They did not react to me with panic or aggression. They assessed me, evaluated the situation, and waited for instruction that told me Denmark had chosen well. Karen transferred the data to him, explaining everything we had seen, everything we had encountered, the network, the facility, the technology, the response, and the tracking. He listened without interruption, his focus sharp, his questions precise. When she finished, there was a moment of silence. Not uncertainty, but calculation. Tennis spoke. "This is bigger than anything we can handle through normal channels." He confirmed what we already knew. We are dealing with something that has reach, resources, and protection. If we go public too soon, they will bury it. If we move without enough support, we risk losing everything, including the people still trapped in that system. He looked at me then, directly, not with suspicion, but with recognition. "You said you've seen this before." I nodded. "I have, and it does not end unless it is ended completely." He understood what I meant, even if Karen did not fully accept it yet. Good. He would be useful in what comes next, because this was no longer an investigation. This was no longer a simple rescue. This was a conflict, one that would require decisions Karen may not be ready to make. But I am, because I have already lived through what happens when you fail to act decisively, and I will not watch another world suffer the same fate, not while I still have the strength to stop it. The room grew quieter after Denmark spoke, not with peace, but with the kind of silence that comes before a storm. The kind I remember from when warriors stood waiting for a signal that would decide life or extinction. Karen stood still, processing everything, not just the scope of what we uncovered, but the implication that her world was not as protected as she believed. That something had already routed itself deep within its systems and was growing unchecked. Denmark began outlining options, but even as he spoke, I could see it in his posture. In the tension behind his words, he already knew there were no clean solutions. Only choices with consequences. He trusted Karen enough to bring her in, but now he was deciding how far that trust extended, how much of the truth she was ready to act on. I remained silent, listening, observing, measuring the people in the room. The 2 officers with him were steady. Their eyes moved constantly, scanning, assessing. They were not here by accident. They were chosen because they could operate outside the comfort of normal procedure. That made them valuable and dangerous. In equal measure, Karen broke the silence first. "We need to shut it down. All of it. Every location, every connection. We can't let this continue." Denmark nodded slightly, but his response was controlled. "That's not something we can do overnight. Not without exposure, not without triggering retaliation. If this network is as deep as it looks, then taking out one piece without securing the others will only cause them to scatter, to disappear and rebuild somewhere else." He was right. This is how systems like this survive. They adapt faster than those who hunt them, because they are built to expect disruption. Karen looked at me, then, as if searching for a different answer, one that aligned more with what she wanted to believe. I held her gaze and spoke plainly. "Then we remove it completely. Not one piece, not one location. Everything at once." She understood what I meant, even if she did not want to accept the method behind it. Denmark studied me for a moment, then asked, "Can you do that?" I did not answer immediately, because the truth is not simple. It would cost innocent lives. That's something I'm trying to avoid now. Something I promised her without saying it directly. "I can find them all," I said finally. I can track the network, identify the nodes, connections, and movement. But what happens after that depends on you and what you are willing to do with the information." Karen stepped forward, her voice steady. "We do it the right way. We gather everything, coordinate with people we trust. No more killing, no more shortcuts." I watched her, seeing strength in her conviction, but also the flaw. The same flaw that costs my world its future. Belief the system will hold, even when breaking. Denmark respected her position. "We will try it your way first, but prepare for the other outcome, just in case." That was the compromise, the balance between hope and reality. For now, it was enough. We began planning, mapping out what we knew, identifying locations from Karen's data, cross-referencing movement patterns, financial flows, and routes. It was complex, but not beyond my ability. I expanded my awareness again, reaching out beyond the room, beyond the city, feeling for subtle signals, traces of technology that didn't belong, faint indicating activity hidden beneath layers of normality. Slowly, the network revealed itself. Not fully, not yet, but enough to begin forming a structure. Multiple sites spread across the region, each serving a different function: collection, processing, transport, distribution, all feeding into something larger. Something centralized but heavily concealed. That central point would be the key, not just to stopping this operation, but to understanding who was behind it and why. Karen documented everything as I described it, translating my perception into coordinates, into actionable intelligence. Denmark coordinated with his small team, assigning roles, preparing for simultaneous action across multiple sites. Timing would be critical. If even one location was alerted too early, the entire network could collapse, erasing evidence, eliminating captives, covering tracks. We would get one chance at this, and it had to be precise. As the plan formed, I felt it again, that presence, that awareness, but stronger now, closer. They were not just watching anymore. They were moving toward us, adapting faster than expected, which meant one of two things. Either we had been tracked again, or they had anticipated our next step and positioned themselves accordingly. Both possibilities led to the same conclusion. We were running out of time. I stepped toward the edge of the structure, focusing outward, narrowing the signals until I isolated it. Movement. Multiple units approaching from different directions, coordinated, controlled, not random. This was a response team sent to eliminate the threat we now represented. "They found us," I said. Denmark reacted immediately, issuing commands, his team moving into position, securing exits, preparing for engagement. Karen looked at me, her expression not fearful, but resolute. She understood now that this was no longer theoretical. This was the moment where everything we discussed would be tested. I moved to the center, positioning myself between the approaching threat and the others, because that is what I do. That is what I have always done, regardless of the world, regardless of the name I carry. I protect the ones who stand with me. The first breach came from above, fast, controlled, precise. They entered expecting resistance, but not like this. I met them mid-descent, disarming the first, before his feet touched the ground, redirecting his momentum into the second. Their coordination broke instantly. Under pressure, they were trained, but not for an opponent who could move faster than their perception. Karen and the others engaged the remaining units, using their weapons strategically, disabling where possible, covering angles. I created openings for them to act within, maintaining control of the flow of combat, minimizing unnecessary casualties, but not hesitating when lethal force was required against those who would not stop. The fight escalated quickly, more units pushing in from all sides, attempting to overwhelm through numbers, a tactic I am very familiar with. It does not work against me. Not when I can control the space, not when I can dictate the pace. I moved through them systematically, breaking their formation, isolating individuals, reducing their advantage until they were no longer a coordinated force, but scattered elements reacting instead of executing. Within minutes, it was over. The room was secured, the threat neutralized, those still alive restrained by Denmark's team. Karen moved through the aftermath, checking for injuries, ensuring everyone was still capable of continuing, her focus never wavering, even as the reality of what just happened settled around her. This was her world now, not the one she believed in before, but the one that truly exists beneath it. Denmark approached me then, his expression more certain than before. "You were right," he said quietly. "They're not going to let us build a case. They're going to try to erase us before we can act." I nodded, because that was always the outcome once we crossed this line. Karen heard it too, and this time she did not argue. She did not push back against the implication. She simply stood there, absorbing it, letting the truth reshape her understanding in real time. "We cannot wait anymore," she said finally, her voice firm. "We move now, all of it. Every location. We hit them before they can react." Denmark agreed immediately, his hesitation gone, replaced by clarity. "Then we do it tonight. All of it at once." I looked at them both, and felt something I had not expected. Not since FreRome, not since before the war. Unity, purpose, alignment, not just in goal, but in action. This was how we used to stand, before everything fell apart. And for the first time since arriving on this planet, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this time the outcome could be different. The night became something else. After that moment, not quiet, not uncertain, but sharpened. Every movement deliberate, every second carrying weight. We did not have the luxury of hesitation anymore. The plan shifted from careful exposure to decisive action, and I could feel the difference in all of them. Karen no longer spoke in terms of procedure. She spoke in outcomes. Denmark no longer measured risk against protocol. He measured it against survival and success. This is what conflict does. It strips away illusion and leaves only truth. We moved quickly, dividing into coordinated teams, each assigned to a location. I would move between them, not bound to one point, but acting as the force that ensured none of them failed. The central location remained unknown, but the outer nodes would lead us there once pressure was applied. Systems like this always protect their core by tightening when threatened, and I intended to force that reaction. The first site fell within minutes. A warehouse near the industrial edge of the city, disguised as storage but functioning as intake. The moment we breached, resistance met us. Immediate and aggressive. These were not guards. They were soldiers, enhanced in ways that confirmed my earlier suspicion. Their movements were faster than baseline human. Their strength increased. Their pain tolerance diminished. They did not retreat, Teyadbans, even when injured, even when outmatched. This was not loyalty. This was conditioning, or something worse. I neutralized them as efficiently as possible, targeting joints, disabling mobility, removing their ability to continue the fight without ending their lives. Karen and the others secured the captives inside. Dozens of team confused, terrified, but alive. That was a victory, but only a small one. As we cleared the site, I felt the network react. Signals shifting, communications spiking, movement increasing across all identified locations. They were aware now, fully aware, and they were responding, exactly as I expected. Tightening, pulling resources inward, protecting something deeper. I moved to the next location before the others had even finished processing the first. Time and distance mean little when you know how to move through space with intent. The second site was more fortified, positioned beneath a legitimate business front, access controlled, surveillance layered, redundancies in place, but none of it designed for someone like me. I entered from below, tearing through structural barriers that would have slowed any conventional force, and emerged directly into their core operations area. The element of surprise shattered their coordination instantly. They attempted to regroup, but I did not allow it. I disrupted their formation before it could stabilize, breaking their lines, isolating their command structure, and forcing them into reactive defense. Within moments, their advantage was gone. Denmark's team arrived seconds later, securing what I had already dismantled. Karen moved through the captives again, her voice steady, her presence grounding for those who had already endured too much. I watched her for a moment as she worked. The way she spoke to them, the way she reassured them, it reminded me of my wife, of the way she used to calm our children during storms on FreRome. before the sky itself became the storm. I turned away before the memory could take hold. There was still more to do. The third sight was different. Before I even reached it, I could feel it. The density of energy, the concentration of technology. This was not just another node. This was a transition point, something closer to the core, heavily defended, heavily concealed. When I arrived, I did not enter immediately. I observed the patterns, the flow of movement, the placement of defenses, and I realized something important. This location was not meant to be found. It was meant to be protected at all costs, which meant whatever was inside was critical. I contacted Denmark, directing him to bring all available units here. This would not be like the others. This would be a confrontation, not a dismantling. When we moved in together, the resistance confirmed it. Waves of enhanced soldiers supported by automated systems, defensive turrets deploying from hidden panels, energy-based weaponry integrated into the structure itself. This was beyond human capability alone. This was hybrid technology adapted from sources that should not exist here, which meant we were no longer dealing with simple opportunists. We were dealing with something connected to a larger ecosystem of power. The fight escalated immediately. I pushed forward, drawing their focus onto me, absorbing their attention so the others could advance behind me. Their weapons struck with force, but not enough to slow me. Their numbers increased, but not enough to overwhelm me. I broke through their front line, creating a path. Denmark and his team followed, securing positions, disabling systems. Karen stayed close, but not exposed. She knew her role. She knew when to move and when to hold. That awareness kept her alive. As we advanced deeper into the facility, we found it the transition chamber, a hub where captives were prepared for transport to an unknown destination. The technology here was unmistakable. Not FreRome, not Saiyen, but something else. Something I had encountered only in passing during my travels between worlds. Scavenger tech, repurposed, modified, optimized for extraction and control. Whoever built this did not originate here. They adapted, they learned, they took what others left behind and turned it into something efficient, something dangerous. We began shutting it down, system by system. Karen extracting everything she could while Denmark's team secured the perimeter. But Aswadid, the entire structure shifted, not physically, but functionally. A lockdown sequence initiated, not to trapos, but to protect something else. Deeper still, beneath this layer, beneath this operation, there was another level, another purpose. And whatever was there was now being sealed away or prepared for evacuation. He felt it. Then a presence. Not like the others. Not controlled. Not conditioned. But aware. Calculating. Observing us. As we had observed it. This was not just an operation. This was a command point. And whoever or whatever was at its center had just realized we were coming for them. I turned to Karen and Denmark. "We're not finished," I said quietly. "This is just the surface." They both understood immediately, their expressions hardening, their focus narrowing. This was the moment everything had been building toward, the point where we stop reacting and start ending it completely. I moved toward the sealed lower access point, placing my hand against the reinforced barrier, feeling its composition, its resistance, its limits. It was strong, designed to withstand significant force, but not mine. Not when applied correctly. I began to push, slowly at first, then with increasing pressure, the structure resisting. 10 cracking, then giving way. As fractures spread across its surface, the sound deep, controlled, contained, but final. Whatever was below had prepared for intrusion. But not like this. Not from someone who had already survived the fall of a world. I broke through the barrier and stepped into the darkness beneath, ready to face whatever waited there. Because this was no longer about stopping a network or saving those taken. This was about confronting the source and ensuring it never rises again. The air changed the moment I crossed into the lower level. Heavier, colder, not in temperature, but in presence, like stepping into a space that was never meant to be inhabited by those above. Karen and Denmark followed close behind, their movements slower, more cautious as the environment shifted around us. The structure here was different, less industrial, more refined, deliberate design choices that favored concealment over efficiency. The lighting was minimal, not for lack of resources but by intention. Shadows dominated the space, and within those shadows, I could feel it. The source. Not a location, not a system, but a mind. Something aware of us long before we arrived. Something that had been watching, learning, adapting as we dismantled its outer defenses. I moved forward without hesitation, because that is how you confront something like this. You do not give it time to prepare further. You do not allow it to dictate the pace. You take that control, and you hold it. Karen stayed just behind me, her weapon ready, her breathing steady, though I could sense the tension beneath it. Denmark flanked the opposite side, coordinating with the remaining team members above, keeping them informed as best he could, though even their communication began to degrade as we descended deeper. Interferent intentional, designed to isolate this level from the rest of the world. We reached the first chamber, and what we found confirmed everything and made it worse. Rows of containment units, similar to those above, but different. These were not holding captives. They were creating something. Human forms suspended and fluid. Their bodies altered, enhanced, reshaped through processes that merged biology with foreign technology. Some were incomplete, others fully formed but dormant, their features distorted just enough to reveal they were no longer entirely human. This was not trafficking. This was production, an assembly line for something new, something engineered for purpose. And that purpose was not survival. It was control. Karen froze for a moment, taking it in. The scale, the violation, the sheer disregard for life as anything more than material. I did not stop. I could not. The presence ahead was growing stronger, more focused, aware that we had seen enough to understand the truth. We moved through the chamber, disabling systems as we passed, Karen forcing herself to act, despite what she was witnessing, shutting down processes that should never have existed. Denmark's voice cut through the silence, low, controlled. We need to find whoever is running this before they wipe everything. I nodded, because that was already happening. Subtle changes in the environment indicated data purges, containment failures initiated, not to save, but to erase evidence, to ensure nothing remained that could trace back to the origin. But they were too late. We had already seen enough. We reached the central chamber, and that is where I saw it. Not a throne, not a command console, not anything so simple, but a structure integrated into the environment itself. A living interface of sorts, organic and mechanical elements fused together, pulsing faintly with energy. At its core stood the one responsible. Not massive, not imposing in the way of brute strength, but composed, controlled. Its form humanoid but altered, elongated features, skin pale with a faint reflective quality, eyes that did not blink, because they did not need to. This was not a being that relied on instinct or emotion. This was intellect refined and weaponized. It looked at me first. Not Karen, not Denmark. Me, because it recognized what I was, what I represented. You do not belong to this world, it said. Its voice not spoken, but transmitted directly. Precise, I have encountered your kind before. Remnants of a failed system that no longer serves purpose. I stepped forward, closing the distance slightly. You are not the first to make that mistake, I replied. My voice steady, controlled. You will be the last. It tilted its head slightly, not in confusion, but in analysis. You misunderstand your role here. You are not a threat. You are an anomaly, one that can be studied, replicated, improved upon. The processes you see around you are only the beginning. Humanity is inefficient, fragmented, limited. We are correcting that. We are building something better, something capable of surviving beyond this planet, beyond the constraints that have defined it until now. Karen stepped forward then, her voice cutting through the exchange. You're kidnapping people, turning them into this. You call that improvement? The entity shifted its focus to her briefly. An acknowledgement, not respect. Your species requires guidance, it said. You lack the cohesion necessary to evolve on your own. We provide direction, structure, Purpose. Those selected are not lost. They are repurposed, elevated beyond their original limitations. Denmark raised his weapon then. "Enough of this," he said firmly. "You're done here. Whatever you think you're building ends tonight." The entity did not react with fear or anger. It simply observed, recalculated, then responded. "You believe this is a single point of failure? It is not. What you see here is one node among many. You have disrupted a function, not the system itself. Even if you destroy this facility, the work continues elsewhere. That was expected. Systems like this never rely on a single point. But it did not change the outcome for this place, for this moment. I took another step forward then. This node ends now, and you with it." The entity's posture shifted subtly, not defensive, but adaptive. It understood escalation. It understood that negotiation was no longer relevant. "Very well," it responded. "Let us evaluate your capabilities directly." The chamber responded instantly. Structures shifting, barriers forming, pathways altering to create space, not for escape, but for confrontation. It was testing me, measuring me, just as it claimed it would. And I allowed it to begin. Because sometimes the only way to end something completely is to show it the full extent of what it has chosen to oppose. It moved first, faster than its form suggested, its motion precise, calculated, not wasted. I met it head on. Our first impact, sending a controlled shock through the chamber. Not destructive, but significant enough to reveal its resilience. It absorbed the force, adapting in real time, adjusting its structure to compensate, enhancing its response, speed, its strength, its coordination. I increased my output, gradually testing its limits as it tested mine. Each exchange providing it with data, each adaptation pushing it closer to understanding my capabilities. But there is something it does not account for, something it cannot replicate. Experience, because the opponent did not give you time to learn. Breaking patterns, altering rhythm, introducing variables it could not immediately process. Not by much, but enough that I saw the opening. I struck with precision, targeting structural weaknesses that had not yet fully adapted. The impact forcing it back, disrupting its integration with the chamber. Karen and Denmark used that moment perfectly, targeting the interface behind it. Not with rage, not with excess, but with finality. The chamber fell silent, the pulsing energy fading as the system lost its central control. Karen moved immediately, securing what data remained, but I remained still for a moment, watching the remnants of what we had just destroyed, because I knew something they were only beginning to understand. This was not over. The entity had told the truth. This was one node, one piece of something larger, and while we had ended it here tonight, the system it belonged to still existed. It would know about me, and that meant what comes next would not be hidden, would not be subtle. It would be direct, and it would be far more dangerous. The silence after its collapse did not feel like victory. It felt like a pause. Karen worked quickly, pulling what fragments of data remained before the system could complete its purge. Her hands steady, even as the reality of what we had uncovered settled deeper into her understanding. Denmark coordinated above, his voice cutting in and out through interference, but still present. Still holding the structure of the operation together, watching the remnants of the entity dissolve into inert material. No longer adaptive, no longer aware, but not meaningless. Ebony death, it represented a design, a philosophy, a direction. That would not end with this single loss. I have seen it before, on other worlds. This is how systems like this evolve, not through survival of individuals, but through continuity of purpose. Karen finished extracting what she could and looked to me. "It's incomplete," she said, frustrated. "They wiped most of it, but there are fragments, coordinates, references, something about off-world routes." That confirmed it. The connection I had been sensing since the beginning. This was never confined to Earth. This was an extension, a branch of something operating across multiple worlds, not under one banner, but under a shared objective. Advancement through exploitation, through forced evolution, through control. Denmark's voice returned clearer now. Movement outside our perimeter. Unmarked units, possible extraction teams. Systems like this do not leave loose ends. Karen straightened then, her focus sharpening again. Then we don't let them take anything. We lose the advantage we gain tonight. Denmark backed it immediately. We exfil now. Regroup and figure out the next move. Karen exhaled once, then nodded. Decision made. Not easily, but correctly. We began our exit, moving back through the facility as systems continued shutting down around us, lights dimming, mechanisms failing. The structure was dying. Not violently, but completely. Its purpose erased along with its control. Unchanged on the outside, unaware of what had just been prevented, what had just been uncovered, but they would not see the truth. Not tonight. Not without what we carried with us. We moved quickly, transferring captives to medical teams, coordinating with the few trusted contacts Denmark had identified, keeping the operation contained as much as possible, speaking to the survivors, reassuring them, grounding them in something real after everything they had endured. In moments like this, you were right about all of it, he said. They will adapt, I said. They will learn from this. And the next time they move, it will be harder. To find, harder to stop. He considered that, then asked, and what about you? Planning to stay involved? Or was this just a one-time intervention? I looked out over the water beyond the city lights, the same water I emerged from when I first arrived here, lost, empty, without direction. I came here to escape, I said quietly, to leave everything behind. But this world, it has its own war, just hidden beneath layers of normality. He followed my gaze. Tenbake to me. Karen believes you can help without becoming what you were before. Do you believe that? I did not answer immediately, because it is not a simple question. On FreRome, survival meant eliminating threats completely, without hesitation, without restraint. That mindset is still within me, still guiding my instincts. But here, there is something different, something worth preserving. Not whose life, but the way they choose to live it, even with its flaws, even with its vulnerabilities. I am trying, I said finally. Not for them, not entirely, but for myself. Because if I become what I was again, then I truly lost everything when my world fell. Denmark accepted that answer with a slight nod. Then we'll need you, he said, because whatever this is, it's bigger than us. And now they know you're here. That is the truth that changes everything. I am no longer an unknown variable. I am now part of their equation. And that means they will come. Not immediately, not recklessly, but eventually. And when they do, it will not be through shadows. It will be direct, calculated, and far more dangerous than what we face tonight. Karen returned then, her expression tired but resolute. They're safe for now, she said. The survivors, they're going to make it. I nodded, acknowledging the victory. Because it matters, even if it is only one part of a much larger conflict. She looked between Denmark and me, then spoke. We need to figure out where this leads. The off-world references, the other nodes. We can't just wait for them to come back. We have to be ready. I agreed, because waiting is not something I do well, and it is not something that wins wars. We prepare, I said. We learn everything we can about this system, where it connects, how it moves. And when it shows itself again, we end it properly this time. Not just a node, not just a fragment, the entire structure. Karen met my gaze, and this time there was no hesitation, no resistance to the implication behind my words. She understood now what that would require, what it might cost, and she did not look away. Good, because the path ahead will not allow for doubt, only action. The city remained quiet as the night stretched on, but beneath that quiet, something had shifted. A hidden war brought slightly into the light, a system disrupted but not destroyed, and a new variable introduced into its calculations. Miam Night Patrol, once a protector of a fallen world. Now something else, something this world may need, even if it does not yet understand it. And as the first light of dawn began to rise over the horizon, I knew this was only the beginning, not just of another conflict, but of a purpose I did not expect to find again. Dawn does not bring peace. It only reveals what the darkness was hiding. The city looked unchanged as light spread across its surface. People moving as they always do, unaware that something beneath them had shifted, that a structure designed to harvest their own had been broken in a single night. They will never know how close it came to growing beyond control, how close it came to becoming something that could not be stopped. And that ignorance is both their greatest comfort and their greatest vulnerability. I stood at the edge of the water, watching the reflection of a sky that does not belong to me, trying to understand why I am still here, why I did not leave when I had the chance, why I chose to involve myself in a conflict that is not mine. The answer is not simple. It is not duty, not anymore. That died with FreRome. It is something else, something quieter, something that grows each time I act, each time I prevent what I once failed to stop. Purpose, not given, but chosen. Karen found me there not long after the operations concluded. She moves differently now, more aware of her surroundings, more attuned to the subtle shifts most ignore. This is what exposure does. It changes perception permanently. Once you see the truth beneath the surface, you cannot return to ignorance. She did not speak immediately, just stood beside me, looking out over the same water, the same horizon. Eventually, she broke the silence. "Denmark's pushing this as far as he can," she said, "but it's already getting resistance. Internal pushback, requests to transfer the case to federal oversight, attempts to reclassify what happened last night as isolated criminal activity." I nodded. Because that is expected. Systems protect themselves first, even when doing so allows greater threats to persist, especially when those threats have influence within the system itself. They will try to contain it, I said, to reduce it to something manageable, something they can control without exposing the larger problem. Karen crossed her arms, her expression tightening. "I'm not letting that happen. Not after what we saw, not after what they did to those people." I looked at her then and saw the same fire I once carried before it was tempered by loss. "Hold on to that," I told her. "But understand this. They will not confront this directly. They will delay, redirect, discredit anything that threatens their structure. You will need more than evidence. You will need leverage." She considered that carefully. "What kind of leverage?" I did not answer immediately, because the answer carries weight, because it is the kind of choice that begins to shift someone from one path to another, the kind that changes who they are over time. "Information," I said finally. "Connections. Proof that links this to something they cannot ignore, something that forces action instead of avoidance." She understood what that meant. Digging deeper, going beyond what is allowed, stepping into spaces where the line between law and necessity begins to blur. She did not reject it, but I could see the hesitation still present. Not doubt, but awareness of the cost. Denmark joined us shortly after, his presence steady as always, but more burdened than before. The weight of command grows heavier when the battlefield expands beyond what you were trained for. "I've got partial clearance to continue," he said, "but it's limited. They're already trying to pull resources, restrict access. We've got a window, but it's not going to stay open long. Then we use it." Karen responded immediately, her voice firm. "We push everything we've got before they shut us down." Denmark nodded, but his focus shifted to me. "We're going to need your help again, not just for force, but for tracking. Whatever you did last night, how you found those locations, we can't replicate that. I can continue."
Hey, you heard about the good news? Y'all sleeping on me, huh? Had a good snooze. Wake up, wake up. We about to get this paper. Money never made me do something, nah, can't make me. Even if the money low can't pay me, even if the money low can't play me.